Welcome to Los Angeles Filmforum at MOCA. I'm delighted to see you all here. Hey, music time! Thank you all for making it for this screening of films with Danny Lyon. As you can see, we have a technological apparatus to bring him to you, and we'll call him in a couple minutes. For those of you who are new to Los Angeles Filmforum, we're the city's longest running organization that screens experimental and avant-garde film, video art, documentary, artist films, non-commercial, handcrafted work. We're in the start of our 45th year now. We screen year-round, mostly at the Egyptian Theater in Hollywood, but we're itinerant and collaborative, so we have a show here in MOCA once every other month. In March, we're doing a mixed show in conjunction with the Patterns exhibition. In May, we'll be hosting the artist Carolina Caicedo with several of her films. And then we also do shows at various other places like the Echo Park Film Center. And then a couple of our other upcoming shows. This Sunday, we have our third show of the week, which are highlights from the International Short Film Festival Oberhausen. In Germany, this takes place usually in the first week of May each year, and it's the leading short film festival in Europe, if not the world. So they get a wide variety of shorts, narrative, experimental, and so forth. And they have a couple of touring programs, and we bring up one of the touring programs here. So it's an interesting set of artist films that we'll be having this Sunday. No guests, unfortunately, for that show. And then on February 7th, we have the artist, photographer, painter Larry Gottheim, who has a long body of really wonderful film work, going back to the early 70s. And he's doing the LA premieres of a couple of his new video works, and then we're showing those with a couple of his works from the early 70s. And he'll be at that in person, and that will be at the Echo Park Film Center. If you really like what we do, please sign up on our email list, which is on the table outside. If you really like what we do, please become a member. It's tax deductible. You get into those shows here and at the Egyptian for free, and a discount on shows that we do with other venues like the UCLA and Red Cat. And let's see, finally, I wanted to thank everybody involved with MOCA for the ongoing assistance with the series, and in particular the greater requirements for tonight. Brian Dang is the programming coordinator here. Alexandra Harrington, Mark Ayala, Christina and Calvin all in AV. And I also want to thank Cody Edison, who's been our contact with Danny Lyon over the weeks or months that it's taken to arrange this show. Cody, did you make it? Oh, hopefully you'll be here soon, Cody. So Danny Lyon, I've been wanting to do a screening with for years. Obviously, his body of work in photography and film, going back to the 60s, is really tremendous in civil rights. We've screened a couple of his films from the 70s, El Mojado, and others that worked with undocumented immigrants who he worked with in New Mexico, that are really wonderful. And in fact, I want to show a couple for this, but Danny wanted to show a couple of new works which haven't shown in Los Angeles before. So that's why we'll be bringing Nothing and Wanderer to you tonight. And then Dear Mark, that's another film that hasn't, I don't know if it's shown here previously, but it's from the early 80s. And he'll talk about why he's shown that as part of the screening as well. I hope you all got programs. One thing is, a couple of hours ago, he suggested putting Dear Mark last as opposed to first. So the show order will go Nothing, Wanderer, Dear Mark. And with that, let's try FaceTiming to New Mexico. Hello. Hi, Dan. How are you doing? Welcome to MOCA. Can you see a bit here? On this side, or can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right.
I can hear you.
So I've already welcomed the audience, and I wanted to see if you want to talk a bit then about to introduce tonight's program and what thoughts you might have about Nothing and Wanderer and Dear Mark.
Hi, is Cody there? Hi, Cody. Wait, is Cody out there?
I don't know if Cody's here yet.
He's back here.
Ah, here, he's made it. He's in the back.
Okay. Well, I was watching a basketball game, Milwaukee Bucks, and the Celtics are closing in. Well, glad you came out to watch the films. I took my first photographs out there at the Santa Monica Pier in 1964 in color. It was nice. Nothing is first. That has a lot of substance. It was my reaction to coming back to the Southwest from the East, where there's a lot more kind of sarcastic comment on existence here. Although I think Nothing has a scene in the cemetery, I think, at the end that shot out in the desert here, and those same rocks appear at the end of Wanderer. Wanderer is the fourth film involving the Jaramillo family, so only it was made about 30 years after Willie died. And Fernie is one of the stars of it, and he's a very sad, overweight, somewhat surviving, mentally challenged person. So he's in it, but it really features my dog Trip, who is on camera a lot. He's the wanderer. And for those who care about dogs, I was in New York just before Hanukkah. It was the first night of Hanukkah, and the phone rang, and it was a local number, so I picked it up, and it was a woman 7 miles from his house, and said that there was a black dog lying by the road, couldn't walk it, and it was Trip. So Trip's an Australian shepherd. They're not supposed to wander. They're homeboys, and they're called Velcro because they stay very close to you. I mean, he ended up being 7 miles from here, and a kind of Christmas miracle. Someone found him and brought him back to the house, and he's doing well. I see him iPhone.
That's good. I mean, does he?
Dear Mark. Go ahead.
Oh no, please go on with Dear Mark.
Well, Nothing was shot with used to be called a 3-chip digital video camera, popular with war correspondents. It was a pretty good camera whose technology became outmoded with 4K. And Wanderer was shot with a camera that just weighs about a pound. I had a broken arm when I shot it, so I wanted something really light I could handle. And so Wanderer was shot in 4K, which is high def. And Dear Mark is a film, a real film, as we used to say, shot in 16 millimeter, which is, it's pretty superior. I think the quality of it. The best films are still made on film, I think, and edited digitally. There's double exposure in it. That was also done as a kind of joke, but it seems to have survived. And the Super is an old friend of mine. He's from California, and he has a great piece at the beach in Venice. And I think they're going to take it down, so there's some kind of protest. And Adam, maybe we should do a little Q&A now while I'm asleep. I mean, awake.
While you're awake? you're early to bed and early to rise, right? So for Dear Mark, we're going to see that last now, but what led you to do the superimpositions that we'll see?
I always hate when they say, oh, that's a good question, but that is a good question, actually. So I had gone over to, Mark left the United States during the Vietnamese Wars of protest. And, oh, is that guy filming? Is that a camera out there?
We're doing a little recording of the Q&A, I think, is what's happening. Oh, we'll talk.
Police for that? In my legal team about that? Filming
Yeah.
that? I just want to tell you that for the records, just to ask. Okay, so anyway, so I was in France and I shot footage, I think it was sculptures, and I thought it was really boring, because it was boring. It's boring for me to shoot sculptures, man. And so I reloaded the camera, I put it in the black bag, and maybe if you put your head in front of the camera, I wouldn't notice that it's filming. All you have to do is go, there you go, Adam. And so I reloaded the film and shot it a second time. So I really had no idea what was going through the camera when I shot it the second time, because it's completely arbitrary. But the results were fabulous, and it's by far the most interesting part of the film. Plus, if you do that, you really should underexpose it each time about a third of the stop to compensate for the fact that you're doing it twice. And I kind of did it the second time and not the first time. It worked out great. So,
how do you think your photographic work and your film work speak to each other? Or what do you do? What are you looking for differently in your film work?
I was just here with Gavin Brown working in this prison show, and the pictures are well known because it was one of my books. But I also shot movies inside the Texas prison, and it's interesting to see them. And when I first saw them, I thought they blew the stills out of the water, but that's probably just because I knew the stills. And they're different. I mean, these were black and white movies that were well done. I could say I regret making a film there, but I did make it. I'm working on a film about the civil rights movement where I didn't have a camera, I didn't shot shit. You can only do one thing at a time. When I really began, like it was I don't know, playing a violin and conducting an orchestra. Films are more complicated than still pictures, but they're related. Movie pictures are nothing but the illusion of a series of still pictures. You know that.
Mm-hmm. Should we see if, does it, go on, you have more? Yes.
Someone wants to ask something.
Yeah, that's what, so please, do any of you have any questions for opening about other aspects? To start? Anybody?
I'd like to talk to you. Do we have a question?
Anybody? Nothing yet. So,
Cody.
Cody,
You, Adam, ask me.
Chris Horak is here. Did the catalog on your work from when he was at Eastman House?
Chris wrote a great piece about my work years ago.
So he's come out to see that as well.
I thought I saw Chris come out to photograph Occupy, which was very strong in Los Angeles, and I went to the city hall, and I really loved that. It only produced a single good picture, but it was worth it. They were just getting, they all been arrested.
How do you figure out, or when do you find that it's a topic or a situation that you wish to photograph?
I don't know. I was working with Gavin and I made a film called Murderers, and I did audio, and I did a book called Like a Thief's Dream. I did audio with a guy named Cobble, Raymond Cobble. He killed 2 people. And in the beginning, he described a friend of his who killed 3 people, including a child. And I seemed to enjoy it, and I think Gavin was turned off. about doing that publicly. He argued that I was romanticizing. You know, really people are not very popular in our society. But, you know, I always felt that we're the real murderers. I mean, how many people were killed when this plane was crashed and no one would be charged with a crime? So, you know, real mass murders aren't done by governments. These guys would go in. You know, I'm sure I wouldn't feel that way if they killed my wife or my dog. But governments kill massive amounts of people. Only governments can do it. So, and there's a quote by Graham Greene about how he like kind of, I don't know, he doesn't use the term the dark side, but he likes the romantic theme for the stuff. So I do too. I think it's in a reaction to American society, which is pretty horrible.
Yeah, I would agree. Now, for something like Nothing, is the film Nothing, is that, do you think, coming out of a place like that as well? Thinking about issues like that?
That's more of an exit statement. You know, with climate change, it's literally threatening civilization, and that may be the future. And there's something comforting in rocks in the desert, which is, you know, it's a result of, you know, hundreds of millions of years of geological time. And here in New Mexico, there are a lot of things. You pick up a rock and say that's 100 million years old. And so, I mean, in terms of climate change, none of that matters too much. It matters to Australians who are on fire. And it matters to us when we can't breathe because of smoke. But in the long term, it matters less. So I think I found some comfort in being in the desert in places that are really eternal in terms of the length of the human life, which isn't very long. Things move along.
Yeah. Any questions yet? Anybody? Any thoughts from any of you?
Where is he?
Tell us where you are.
I'm sitting in my studio north of Albuquerque, and it snowed today. We have snow on the ground, which is rare. It's 5,000 feet up, high desert. And I was watching the Milwaukee Bucks play the Celtics.
Who was winning when you last saw? Milwaukee?
Well, unbelievable. They have, I mean, this is so amazing. They have a guy named Giannis who's called the Greek Freak. And he's Greek, even though he looks like a Negro, because his parents are Nigerian. But he was born in Athens, and that's where he's from. He was the best player in the I love looking at these guys and thinking about how rich they are. Well, you think of it, here's the child of Nigerian immigrants, right? He's the best player they had, so they're all multi-millionaires, including the parents and all. It's pretty cool.
But none of them are as wealthy as the team owners.
I don't know. They're pretty wealthy, these guys. Yeah.
Now, when did you start? When did you originally go to New Mexico to live? And why?
Long time ago. And I started making films immediately. All the films are on Vimeo. You just put my name in Vimeo. And Wanderer is the fourth of a trilogy that begins with Anito, which I made around 1971. And it follows this. Fernie, this kind of overweight, mentally challenged guy in his 50s, appears in Anito and he's a 10-year-old boy. Same guy.
Well, how did you originally get to know him? Why is he interesting to you?
With a bunch of kids walking up the street, they were playing with gold.
What was that again? Can you say that again, please?
Just a bunch of children playing out in the street. They were playing with a goat in a lot. And they just did my thing. So they were easy to know, and I kind of kept up with them ever since. I still know a lot of the family. Well, this is a small town, which is nice. People know each other. The woman who found my dog, 7 miles away, knew the community, and Dean Montoya cleans his house, knew who the woman was, and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of nice when you're in that kind of place.
Now, with somebody like Fernie, who you've known for so long, but in what ways do you think did it take him time to trust you or let him photograph you? How do you think do you think his behavior changes when you're filming him?
Yeah, no, but I think he's so lonely and isolated. I think he was so happy to get some attention. On the other hand, I don't think they care for the film. I put it on Vimeo, and I think I told them, Gloria sent me one of the emojis, and that's what they call. She sent me one with the funny looking face. Not the vomit, but the kind of not cheerful one. A frown. So I don't think they like the film. But it's a pretty brutal portrait of her.
And Dear Mark, how was his response when he first saw that film years ago?
Well, the reason I made that film was, and that was an early film, was the NEA did not give money in the 70s. If you said I want to make a film, they wouldn't give you any money because they'd say it wasn't an art form. Which is funny, but we consider independent filmmaking an arts form, like you say, well, a painter or a sculptor. But if you said the one cat, and this is not humanities, this is the arts, but if you said I want to make a film about an artist, I mean, I'm not an artist, but I want to make a film about a real artist, like a painter, they'd fund that. That was the category. So I went to the supervisor, I said, Mark, can I use your name? Because I just wanted to get the money, and I did, and I must have got it. It didn't amount to much. I don't know how much it was. I mean, it was $5,000 or something. And then another thing happened. One of the Manil children, and they're millionaires, one of them was a filmmaker. And while I was doing this, he made a film that's spent like $1 million or something filming Mark. So he kind of shows up. He's making this film that's going to be on television and stuff. I don't think I've ever seen it. And he had a helicopter, he was going to shoot from a helicopter and all that stuff. And I thought, well, I can never compete with that. I might as well make a silly film. So I started did double exposure. I put it in the Lone Ranger, and I really had a lot of fun. And it kept, you know, it's very liberating when you think no one's ever going to look at your film. And you're never going to sell it. It really is liberating. So instead of trying to satisfy some imaginary standard, you can fuck around. And I did. Also, I had really early footage of him I just shot with a Bolex. And that footage appears. And also, DeSuper's a cripple. I mean, he's had a broken back since that moment. He just had his leg removed below the knee. So he struggled with this his whole life. But I never would talk about it with the film or with the interview. I would never do something like that. And so he's a very heroic character. But in the film, there's a black and white sequence where they're playing with swords and someone stabs him in the back and it falls on him. So that's a reference to the fact that, in fact, he was crushed in an elevator and crippled. But it's just done in a funny way.
How did you originally decide to, and you all hear this, the Gene Autry soundtrack for that film? How did you originally arrive at that?
Really appropriate, because it's all about sealing the border. Mexicans are really smugglers and all the things. It says everything that the president now has pointed out must be true. You know, these are just horrible people we're going to build the wall. And it's a Gene Autry show, probably from the 1950s. And it's about a crooked sheriff who's smuggling in Mexicans. It's very funny. I was just a fan. You know, I grew up listening to radio. And I really liked listening to it. And interestingly, I did a film called Childhood pretty recently about my own childhood from my birth till I was about 15. And I used it as a soundtrack for Lone Ranger. The first Lone Ranger, which is a really great thing where he's shot in a ravine and all the Texas Rangers are killed him. He's discovered, still alive by Tonto. And Tonto has always been a model for my friendships with either Mexicans or Native Americans, or people of color different than myself. And people like that have always been very important in my life. I was just with John Lewis, the congressman, who's, we're very close friends, but it's like the Lone Ranger and Tonto. This colored guy, this white guy, one's an artist, one's a congressman. So it's an interesting relationship. And Tonto is really the smart one who comes up with all the clever ideas like the mask. That was Tonto's idea, not the Lone Ranger. And I use that as a soundtrack for a story of my life. Comment. Or whatever.
How did you become good friends with John Lewis, with Congressman Lewis?
I met him when I was 20. I met Bernie Sanders, Mark DeSubro, and John Lewis in all at the same time. I was 20 years old. I was a student with Bernie. I'm a Bernie guy, and California is important to vote for Bernie. Plus, he can be president. There is a path to power here. And I was photographing civil rights movement, John, when I was 12. We became roommates in Melbourne. He's doing well, but he's struggling. I'm making film about it.
Well, look forward to seeing that as well. And let's see, any other thoughts or other questions before we?
I have one more.
Please, and then you. Please, what was your question?
Do you pay them?
You want to know if you pay the people in your films?
I don't. I think that's a fair question. But I was in Haiti photographing it was like a revolution, and there were a lot of journalists there. And I remember a French guy saying he never pays anyone. I think it's considered unethical for a journalist to pay a person. That's an interesting question. So think of that, a journalist like Dan Rather or a reporter. In other words, it's considered that it taints the material to give someone money. That's a fair argument. In other words, if I'm interviewing you and saying, about corruption, and I say, here's $100, that's suspect. So that's journalism. Now I'm a filmmaker, but when I film people who are in prison and stuff like that, I will give them money just because they need the money that I got. And I sent Fernie some money. I don't feel I was hiring or even bribing him, but I had money in my wallet. And that is nothing. He's shoplifting at Walmart's. This guy. So the answer is yes, but no, I don't really pay people to film. I don't hire someone and say, hey, you want to be in a film? I'll give you money. I do it. I work with people usually friendly. I become friendly with people who I want to film.
I mean, I think the camera lens affects the behavior of most people, whether they're paid or not.
I don't even agree with that. It's a recording device, but it has to do with your relationship with the people. And very early on, I was very influenced by Hugh Edwards. He was crippled also. He was a curator in Chicago, and I had made my very first pictures there of motorcycles that he liked. And he said, well, it was clear that these were the best things I had ever done. I got so excited. And then he said, for the first time, you've stepped out between the lens and the subject, meaning I had removed myself. And then he said the real puzzler, he said, and because of that, these pictures show more about you than anything you've ever done. So that's really a contradiction and a very complicated philosophical idea, that by removing yourself, you're showing more about yourself. But these people in the films, they're not singing and speaking to my camera. They're singing and speaking to me. So it has to do with what I can evoke from someone else as a person.
Yeah, of course, that's true. It's just a question of authorship and, shared authorship.
His follow-up was, it raised...
I understand, I understand.
I'm gonna check, there was another question here?
Yeah, I was just
Please.
curious, you started out photographing motorcycles and civil rights movement. If you were starting over again as a still photographer with the issues of the day that we have now, what would be the most burning things that you'd be most interested in really following full scale, you know, to document?
Were you able to hear that? Or should I repeat it?
The only issue is climate change. I think it trumps everything. And I hate identity politics, which are huge. I just hate them. And I'm doing a show now, and it's like, oh, make sure you have enough blacks, and make sure you have women and wisdom women, and all this stuff I can't say. But that's a reality of politics. I think climate change is the only issue, but I don't know how you deal with that. There are plenty of pictures of fires. I like Extinction Rebellion. I think it has to be dealt with through violence. I mean, the situation is, you can only compare the situation to the Russian Revolution in the country. The situation is so extreme. And that's, I think, the only subject out there.
What are the subjects of the pictures on the wall currently behind you?
Those are rocks. Those are pictures of rocks, and they're actually in Wanderer ends. I have a favorite rock. It's out in the desert. I know guys with backhoes that go moving it onto my lawn. It probably weighs 3 or 4 tons, but it's a perfect cube. It fell off a cliff like 50,000 years ago, or a million years ago. And it's just sitting there in the desert, and I like to visit it, and I photographed it. And the last scene in Wanderer, the person who's Dennis Barker and the dog who's always alone become united at that rock. So these are more rocks. In fact, the photographs preceded the film. And I haven't had much time to go back out there, but it's quiet, there's nobody there. Reminds me of the end of their earth.
All right, any more from any of you, please? Any other further questions from the audience? No?
Adam,
Yes.
I have a blog and you can comment on it and it goes public, or you can send messages to me and I'll get them. And if they make any sense, I'll answer them.
All right, and that's at Leak Beauty?
Leak Beauty.
That's at leakbeauty.com, right? So we'll start the show. It's about 75 minutes. So actually, it may work out that you'll be able to, and I don't know if we'll be, the screening will go until 9 o'clock our time. So I think we did ultimately arrange to basically do the Q&A before the films. And we have to leave the theater at 9.
Yeah.
So
Drive safely.
so you'll be able to go to sleep after the game.
Yep. I'm going to drive around my electric car. I feel good about it because there's no tailpipe emissions.
Does it work in, is it good for that area, an electric car?
It's good if you don't want to go more than 120 miles because at that point you got to turn it around and come back. So I can't read.
So you need one of each. All right, well, I wanted to thank you very much for joining us to introduce your films and for answering questions tonight. We really look forward to watching the 3 films here tonight. And thank you for your ongoing amazing photography and filmmaking.
Thank you.
And once again,
Thanks for
Danny Lyon.
Hi, Tony.
Hey, Cody. All right. Have a great evening. We'll follow up.
Thank you, Ed.
Thank you. Cheers.
See you again.